Thanks, Jim. Justin Stone here from EliteBaseball.tv. And a few weeks ago, when I was doing our podcast from Europe, I challenged coaches and parents. I said, open a book, pick up YouTube, learn something new. And what I want to talk about today is kind of my transformation as a coach from when I started coaching collegiate baseball in 1998 at Indiana State University to the person I am today and the coach that I am today, continuing to grow and constantly trying to challenge myself with new information and a better way to do something. So I want to revert back and tell you some things that I said that were clearly in error as I've evolved as a coach. And the reason why I'm doing this is I think a lot of coaches are scared to try something new in the admission that they were wrong at one time, or there was a better way to do something than they currently do it. It's very easy to get stuck in your ways because challenging yourself with new information, learning something new, or trying something and failing can be very threatening to somebody that's supposed to be in a position of authority. So people look to me as I'm giving information in our industry to coaches like yourself, to parents like yourself, to try to better the athletes you come in contact with. So that's a great responsibility for me to be right. But let me tell you this, nobody, certainly including myself, has all the answers about the game of baseball, certainly not all the answers about hitting. And that's something that we're trying to get better at as we go, and it does involve faster today because we have more bells and whistles in technology. But I'm going to tell you some of the things that I taught. I remember being a college hitting coach 1998 through 2001 at Indiana State University, where we had several high draft picks. We had guys that went on to play in the big leagues, and I essentially just taught the upper body portion of the swing, specifically with the hands. And reverting back, I used to talk about trying to slot the hands as tight as we could to the body, really taking the knob to the baseball, getting downhill in the first move to create a steep swing plane to get to the baseball quicker. And these are all things that if you follow us on social media or you hear us in our podcast are a complete 180 from what we teach today. At that time, in that point in time, I was teaching what I'd learned. I was teaching what I knew. And that was to be as short as possible in order to get to the baseball. And we still had players that had success with that bad instruction. Take a couple of years later, and now as a private instructor, and I remember doing some lessons for the first time, working with Division I athletes again, and still working the hands portion of the swing. And I actually said, this came out of my mouth with an athlete that was struggling with some lower body issues. And I said, if you've got to the point where you are right now as a Division I athlete, and you haven't figured out how to turn your lower body, we have something wrong with you. So we just need to focus on the last portion of the swing, which is the hands itself. Why did I say this? And this may be the biggest point of our podcast today, because I simply didn't understand it. How could I teach something that I didn't have a complete understanding of and transfer that information in a helpful way to an athlete? And that's when I started to do more and more video, 2D, 3D video, and I continued to grow as a professional. And the more that I learned about the biomechanics of the swing, the more I realized I didn't know. And I tweeted this out the other day, as a matter of fact. I said, the more I've done video analysis over the last 18 years of hitting, I realized that something I had done my entire life as a player, until I finished my playing career at 22 years of age, I knew nothing about. So basically, when I started coaching, I knew nothing about the craft I was supposed to be an expert in. And of course, if you're 22 years of age and you're a coach, you're not an expert in much of anything. And I still wouldn't consider myself a guru, as some people say that to me today. It's like, I'm not a guru of much of anything. I just challenge myself to try to learn and try to get my ability to transfer this information to people like you and break it down as simply as I can. But I don't know that I'll ever, and I'm pretty certain that I won't, be able to give you every answer about how to make a hitter better, because I don't think anybody's ever going to have that information. But I think back to some of the things that I said in error. It wasn't out of spite. I wasn't trying to make players worse. It was the information I had at the time, and that information has continued to grow over time. So the point of this is, don't be afraid to admit that you were wrong. Don't be afraid to admit there's a better way of doing something than the way you did it 4 or 5 years ago. I have a good example again here today of people still ask us from EliteBaseball.tv if I have a DVD copy of what we teach. And we cut a video 4 or 5 years ago that's called Building the Major League Swing. And part of the reason we did EliteBaseball.tv is it gave us the ability to, in real time, adjust some of the things or make amendments to some of the things that we teach. If we have a better way of teaching something now than I did 2 years ago, I want to give that information to you and be able to do it in a very quick manner. It's not that we were wrong, it's that we found a better way to do something. So when people ask me about that DVD from 4 or 5 years ago, I said, yeah, I have it. It's just there's several things on there I would say a different way today, and there's several things on there that I think I teach better, or there's several things on there I wouldn't even teach anymore. And if I look back in 5 more years, I want to be able to say the same thing. Because if I'm not giving you better ways to say things 5 years from now, I've failed you, and I failed myself as a professional because I have not continued to grow. So that was my challenge to you a couple weeks ago, is to find something new, learn something new, and be able to present that to somebody else. And don't be afraid to fail, because we're going to, and that's part of growth. And don't be afraid to say that maybe down the road I can say something better than I did 5 years ago, or certainly in my coaching career that spanned now over 18 or 19 years, I know I'm a better professional today for that than what I was when I first started. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to continue your education. Until next week, this is Justin Stone from EliteBaseball.tv, and we'll see you on the field.